Jeremiyah Love is set up to be an elite RB1 in fantasy football with the right landing spot. We tell you about him and 5 other impact rookies to look out for in 2026 fantasy drafts on today's Locked On Fantasy Football.
You are Locked On Fantasy, your daily NFL fantasy podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Greetings, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Locked On Fantasy Football Podcast. We're part of the number one podcast network in the country, Locked On Podcasts. And today's episode, we're going to dive right into my mock draft. I'm looking at the 6 most impactful fantasy football players, rookies for 2026, before they have a team. So we'll analyze their skill set, where they might go, what their fit and production can be. And this is immediate in 2026. We know there's a lot of skill players that are talented and are going to go in the first round. We'll break down where they're ranked. Should they be there? Are they underlooked? Which are the 2 guys that everyone's sleeping on? We'll get into all that in today's show. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5 and get $250 in bonus bets if your first bet wins. Head to FanDuel.com to get started. I'm your host, Vinnie Iyer. My co-host, Michelle Majuk, is off today, and we will dive into what I did recently for SportingNews.com. I just conducted my 7-round mock draft, and a lot of these guys that I'm talking about in depth there with their selections and what they can mean in the NFL. Let's start with Jeremiyah Love. He's the easy impact player among the rookies in this class to be the number one scorer. Right now in half-point PPR, Jeremiyah Love is ranked 25th overall, the RB12, so the last of the RB1s in 12-team leagues that you would look at for Love. Now, you're asking, is this guy a can't-miss running back? Yes, he is. He's got the power, the explosiveness, the versatility, the receiving skills to be on the field for 3 downs. Now, if you've been paying attention to mock drafts, and mine falls in line with a lot of those, the clear best fit in the first round for Jeremiyah Love in the top 10 picks, the Washington Commanders at number 7. Why? Because they only added Rachaad White in free agency. They're trying to clean up this backfield. They've gone through Austin Eckler, Bill, Jaquarii Crosby, Merritt hasn't quite worked out. They cycled in Brian Robinson Jr. They didn't bring him back after the 49ers did not sign him. So, again, this team should be in the market for a top back. And we know Rachaad White is a complimentary back. So it seems to be the void is there for that early down workhorse in Washington. So right now, Washington is a clear front runner for his services. Now, we've seen the Giants pop up a little bit, the Browns, but the Giants have options with Cam Scatterboo and what they have with Tyrone Tracy Jr., and the Browns also just have a power back that they can look forward to in Quinshon Judkins. So for those teams, the need is such greatness elsewhere that they need to look there. Well, the Commanders' sweet spot here is at that spot. I mean, they could look at David Bailey, the pass rusher from Texas Tech, but he could be off the board well before 7, and I don't think they'll force wide receiver here. So when you look at that, Jeremiyah Love is fantastic fit for them. Let's hope that's the landing spot because that's clear-cut backfield. It's ideal, right? Because you have the running quarterback to help. You have a decent run-blocking offensive line. You have the significant amount of touches where Rachaad White is probably going to be inserted in a few occasions in passing and red zone work. So it really lines up for Jeremiyah Love being huge as an RB1 and producing, and really the talent is there for him to touch the ball 20 plus times a game as a rookie. So it doesn't matter where he lands up here because the team that's going to covet him is going to give him a lot of work. Now, we don't want him to go to maybe like in Arizona because you have now Tyler Algier and James Conner returning. That would be a little cloudy, right? To have those 2 and then add Jeremiyah Love. Love would still be the favorite to lead the team in touches, but may not be that big workload guy that we're looking at. We don't necessarily want him to go to the Chiefs. The Chiefs to trade up with their 2 first-rounders. They have Kenneth Walker the third. So I don't think they're going to do that, but you never know. But you don't want him on a team where he's going to have to split. I mean, I think you can look at that now in New Orleans. Travis Etienne is there. You do not want a Love Etienne split. You want Etienne to take the workload from Alvin Kamara. So free agency has dictated a little bit of what we're seeing here. Rachaad White being the modest pickup for the Commanders. Say they're ready to welcome Jeremiyah Love, give him a big workload, and see that fantasy production flow through. So he's just that good. RB12, absolutely fair ranking for him, and just outside the top 20 here at 25 overall really makes sense because he's going to have some pass catching value. He's definitely going to have some touchdown value as well. So I'm really excited. I could see him get 1,500 yards from scrimmage, 10 or more touchdowns easily in his rookie season with pretty good volume no matter where he lands up. Now, I'll talk about one more player, Carnell Tate. It's a little trickier here. He's the best wide receiver on the board, according to me. Now, the two best landing spots for him earlier, right before that pick, would be with the New York Giants. They didn't get that field stretcher in free agency. They were looking at Alec Pierce. They need someone to put with Malik Neighbors. Carnell Tate playing off a healthy Neighbors would get a lot of single coverage. And you have the big arm of second-year quarterback Jackson Dart. So that is a good position for Carnell Tate to shine, but also staying in state, going from Columbus to Cleveland to the Browns here. It would be a very good pick as well because they need a clear number one receiver on the outside. They can't just rely on Harold Fannin Jr. as a hybrid tight end wide receiver to be the go-to guy for Shedeur Sanders, or else they have a quarterback. Maybe it's Ty Simpson later in this draft. So I think definitely you look at Carnell Tate. He takes the top off of defense. He's a complete receiver. He's the best in his class. So wherever he ends up, he will definitely have an opportunity there to stretch the field, make some big plays, maybe have an Alec Pierce like impact immediately. And a Pierce, it took a while, but I think you can compare them a lot. He's a speedy guy on the outside, but Tate, I think, is a little bit better coming in as a complete receiver, playing that Ohio State offense and just being highly pedigreed there. So again, he right now is going at the wide receiver 32 spot, 72 overall. So that's clearly saying there's a wide receiver 3 market here for Carnell Tate with some upside. That could be his floor this season, depending on where he lands. So very talented prospect, lean, lanky, strong, can stretch the field, and is going to deliver some of that in the NFL. And hopefully he'll get a favorable spot where he's not seeing double teams, not being forced to be the guy. I think it'd be very helpful, again, if he plays off somebody on the inside or outside that can really open up the offense for him and land with a decent quarterback situation as well. That would be helpful. So ideally, it would be great if he's a Giant, but I think he also could end up being a Brown in the first round. There's a lot of teams that need a wideout. You go down the line, and we have some pairs for those teams. Definitely there's no lack of wide receivers that can go early in the draft. So again, Love just right there. I think Tate is a little bit undervalued for where he's at. So we'll get into some other receivers here in our next two guys that I want to mention for immediate impact right after we hear from one of our fine sponsors. All right, this episode, Locked On Fantasy Football, is brought to you by Indeed. Workplace chaos, deadline stacking up, inbox overflowing, and the one position you have to fill is still sitting open. When the pressure's on and you need the right hire, this is a job for Indeed Sponsored Jobs. Indeed Sponsored Jobs helps you reach the people who actually fit what you're looking for, skills, experience, location, so you're not just hoping the right candidate stumbles across your post. And there's a stat that says it all. In the minute I've been talking to you, companies like yours made 27 hires on Indeed, according to Indeed data worldwide. So if you're hiring, spend less time searching and more time interviewing candidates who check all your boxes with Indeed Sponsored Jobs. And it's great because you can be a listener of the show and get a $75 sponsored job credit to help get your job the premium status it deserves at Indeed.com/podcast. When you need the right person to cut through the chaos, this is a job for Indeed Sponsored Jobs. Just go to Indeed.com/podcast right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions to apply. Need to hire. This, again, is a job for Indeed Sponsored Jobs. All right, before we continue the show here, do have to have an important announcement for you. If you love the show, Don't forget to check out the Everyday Club for ad-free episodes and access to group chat that we'll have come draft time. It'll be really good for you. We can connect with me and Michelle on the show and other listeners as well. Tap the link in the show notes or go to lockedonfantasyfootball.supercast.com to learn more. All right, let's get into the next two receivers. And some guys out there like one of these guys better than the other. I think they're about the equal sense of impact here, but I think Makai Lemon might have a little bit more versatility to do so. He's a product out of USC. I've seen him play a lot in the Big Ten and making that transition. He is a very busy target guy, and he reminds me a lot of Amon-Ra St. Brown, who also went to USC, who can get open in the middle of the field. Now, he's the last ranked starting wide receiver after we had Carnell Tate at wide receiver 32 among the rookies. Right behind him is Makai Lemon at 83, wide receiver 36, and actually right behind him is Jordyn Tyson at 86, their wide receiver 37. So this tells you there's not much separation between Lemon and Tyson, the next two prospects in this class. Now, Lemon, again, very good route runner, good hands. I think he'd be good as a complementary receiver. So I'm looking at the Jets who have Garrett Wilson. If he's healthy, you get Makai Lemon in good position to get favorable coverage, working the slot inside. Same thing with the New Orleans Saints. Interesting, they have Chris Olave, the other Ohio State guy that you could look at, with Garrett Wilson in that same class. So then you have a number two that's very effective. They need a replacement here for Rashid Shaheed after dealing him in the middle of last season. But the Jets, desperate, need a number two really badly in this offense with Geno Smith now taking over quarterback. Same thing goes for the Saints. Again, really need that guy to take pressure off Chris Olave and make big plays. So those are the two ideal landing spots for me for Lemon, because he can get inside, which is important because then he can get those slot matchups, and you know he's not going to get double teamed with the other guy there being Wilson or Olave in those circumstances. So he's a very technically sound route runner. He's going to get it done with volume in the middle of the field. He really is just very good hands. You can trust him to move the chains. So he's a guy that you would look at more in half and full point PPR to just kind of rack up those targets, work the middle of the field. Not necessarily going to be a big touchdown guy if he's in that role here. Carnell Tate definitely has the bigger upside in scoring right now. That could be the separation here, not only in reality, but in fantasy. But Lemon on his own right is very quick, very good to get open, very good route runner. And this is why he is kind of maybe ascended over Jordyn Tyson in a lot of boards, including where I have him. I think he's a little bit better because of his versatility and reliability than we have. But Jordyn Tyson is a bit volatile, but maybe a bigger playmaker. So I think it's a little bit of a riskier pick, but a little bit more reward that you would get downfield if Jordyn Tyson really hits. Now, Tyson, really good profile, nice size. You can put him as a big slot if you need it, but I think he's best suited as the outside guy that could be just the straight up X. I think he has some Z qualities as well to stretch the field, but I'm looking at two teams here that are very intriguing. Now, the Bucs have come up quite a bit for Jordyn Tyson. I know they took Emeka Egbuka. This is going to be interesting on both fronts. The other team that's come up a lot for Jordyn Tyson, the Panthers. So I think it's also catching a falling person here. And it's just the wheelhouse of best player available potentially for Jordyn Tyson. Now, how would he fit on the Bucs? Well, they lost Mike Evans. Chris Godwin is getting old. They need somebody with Emeka Egbuka. So it doesn't hurt to go back-to-back here at wide receiver in the first round. Neither does it hurt for the Panthers to pull off the same thing with Tetairoa McMillan being the rookie of the year. Really, it's Egbuka and McMillan were the shared rookies of the year, however you look at it, last year. So that would seem like odd, right? But again, the Panthers don't really have that reliable number two receiver. McMillan worked out well, and Egbuka as well, so they have confidence, these two teams, that they can draft well again in the first round. Jordyn Tyson would be a good coup in the middle of that first round, 14, 15, 16 there. Makai Lemon, I think, should go ahead of Tyson, but it would be very close, depending on what the team is looking for. If they're looking for a little bit more big play on the outside upside, they're going to go with Jordyn Tyson. If they're looking for more, slot dedicated volume guy that we're going to trust with good hands, we not get those 25, 30-yard bombs as much, they would go with Makai Lemon. So it's pretty close here with both those guys, but I think they can both be very fantasy relevant. Lemon doing it more with volume and targets and the efficiency as a pass catcher. There again, more in the PPR leaning leagues. Well, Jordyn Tyson, I think, would be the guy that you look at in half point PPR and standard leagues a little bit more because of his big playability on the outside and can also score. So those are actually the three highest rated rookies at wide receiver. When you look at Carnell Tate, Makai Lemon, Jordyn Tyson, all on the borderline verge of being drafted here. You also have a special tight end that should go in the middle of the first round, Kenyon Sadiq, and Omar Cooper Jr. has really emerged here ahead of Casey Concepcion and Denzel Boston as a receiver to watch. So we'll get into Cooper and Sadiq. They might be the two most underrated guys right now with their rankings. We'll get into that to close the show and then name a few other rookies that we want to put on our watch list early before they have a team the 2026 NFL Draft. This episode, Locked On Fantasy Football, is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. The NBA playoffs are set to be here, where every possession matters, every matchup is magnified, and every game can swing a series. And right now, FanDuel is giving new customers a great way to get into the action. Here's what I like. You can bet just the $5 and get $250 in bonus bet if your first bet wins. During the playoffs, that extra insight really matters when you're looking at stars, role players, and key moments. So it's going to be an epic battle in the West. You have the Thunder, the Nuggets, the Spurs. That's going to be fantastic. The Pistons are trying to live up to their number one seed status in the East. It'll just be a lot more exciting. The entire playoff experience will be more engaging for you from start to finish with FanDuel. Just look at FanDuel and get in there. You also have the Warriors, the playing game. They just had a big return game from Steph Curry. So a lot of stuff to get in on with the NBA, with the NCAA tournament ending here. Head to FanDuel.com to get started. FanDuel, play your game. All right, let's go to still the middle of my mock draft in the first round. Now, these two guys I think are a bit underrated because I think they're going to be in good landing spots. And Omar Cooper Jr. out of Indiana, Fernando Mendoza's go-to guy with Elijah Surratt, he's emerged as a first-round pick. Just a really good route runner, can be a field stretcher at times, can work the middle of the field. So he's really catching up a little bit on Makai Lemon and Jordyn Tyson, and even Carnell Tate as a wide receiver we're going to look at now. He's also passing in Casey Concepcion of Texas A&M, a littler guy that you move around, quickness, open field. He's dynamic, but I'm not sure teams will be just flocking to him because of the size. And then Denzel Boston out of Washington, he's not just the blazer that you're looking for initially on the outside for his size. So I think they're slipping a little bit, and Omar Cooper Jr. is taking advantage because, again, he's riding the coattails of Fernando Mendoza. Mendoza's not a number one overall pick without Cooper. Cooper's not a first rounder without Mendoza. So they really connected well in college. They really boosted their stock together. And then Cooper has benefited more because Mendoza has been locked in to the number one overall pick for the Raiders. Now, there's a potential the Raiders could manipulate the board and say, look, we want Cooper, much like we have with Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase. We want to attach Cooper to Mendoza immediately. We need a wide receiver help. We can't just be sitting on Brock Bowers at tight end and then Ashton Jennings out of the backfield to lead our receiving corps. So they need that number one. So Mark Cooper could be a guy. 49ers also an option. I know they added Christian Kirk. It's not the ideal spot, but Christian Kirk is always hurt. They did get Mike Evans. You're also not sure that Ricky Pearsall will be on the field. So Omar Cooper could still be an asset for the 49ers there if they want to stash and get a little bit more upside. But another team that definitely needs a wide receiver that you would look at a lot. The Miami Dolphins, they made that trade of Jalen Waddle to the Broncos. They have that extra pick now. So that also gives them some flexibility in the first round to go after an Omar Cooper. Because, again, he can do it all as a go-to guy that you look at. And, again, I don't think he'll go necessarily to the Panthers or Bucs. I think if they can't get one of those receivers early, they'll pivot to maybe the best tight end of the class. But I do like Omar Cooper Jr. quite a bit. If he ends up with Mendoza, his stock is going to rise. So again, that'll have to probably happen in a trade up from the Raiders in the second round, trade up a few spots to get him, but that's not out of the realm of possibility. Again, he could elevate and go to the Jets. We could see that happen. Maybe he goes and stays in a state with the Colts and have his impact to replace Michael Pittman Jr. there with Pierce going. So actually would be a really good replacement there to stay in state for the Colts and get that job done. So really, I do love Omar Cooper quite a bit. I think he's got everything complete here. Denzel Boston, I said, has the size. Concepcion has the quickness aspect. Now you have the speed, quickness, size there that goes with Omar Cooper, and it's the clutch playability. I mean, he's just known for doing that. So again, I think he's severely undervalued right now, and you got to look past a few receivers and running backs that are going to be potential rookies in this league. He's wide receiver 68, 177. Right now, he is a steal. If you're doing best ball or early fantasy drafts, he's an absolute steal there. I think he's going to have a much bigger impact no matter what team he's on. Omar Cooper just makes plays. We saw that a lot with Mendoza in Indiana. So that will carry through to the NFL. He just knows when to come through in big moments and get those touchdowns, big plays, all the things you're looking for to add up to immediate fantasy football success. Now, other options, we have the Chiefs and Steelers waiting. They could also be in the market for a wide receiver, so watch out for their Cooper definitely would be okay on the Steelers, but you already have now Michael Pittman and DK Metcalf, so it wouldn't be as appealing. The Chiefs definitely would be something we think about a little bit more with the crowd, but there's some certain questions about that. Rashee Rice's health, Xavier Worthy up and down, so there's an opening there even with the Chiefs. Now, Kenyon Sadiq is a unique prospect. He should not be tight end 23, by the way, 210 on the board. Now, there's a couple teams that you could have immediate impact for. The Panthers would be one. They haven't had an immediate impact or impact tight end, period, in the season since the heyday of Greg Olsen. They tried it with Jatavion Sanders. They've held on to Tommy Tremble way too long here. They've just cycled through some guys that had promise but didn't get it done. Ian Thomas, remember that name, anyone? So they need to maybe find a way to have an impactful receiving tight end. I think that would go a long way to help Bryce Young. I know they have Tedero McMillan, so that might be a little bit more logical for the Panthers to do that versus go straight up wide receiver, go wide receiver, tight end. Help Bryce Young, help him build on that losing performance against the Rams. He still had some confidence, played well. I think there's still plenty of room for Bryce Young to grow and that Panthers offense to get better. He would make sense, so much sense, Sadiq in a Panthers uniform. But the other team that you look at, the Buccaneers. I know they brought back Cade Otton, but they might be changing things up because now you have a new offensive coordinator in Zach Robinson who came over from the Falcons. He may want to institute more 12 personnel and open it up here for Sadiq to be a bigger playmaker to kind of replace that void of a big body guy who can also stretch the field in Mike Evans. So I'm really excited about what he can do here with his athletic mismatch ability. We've also seen it doesn't take long for a rookie tight end to have impact. We saw with Brock Bowers blowing up in his rookie year. We had to wait only for year two for Trey McBride, but we also had Kyle Pitts had his best year right out of the gate with 1,000 yards as a first-round pick for the Falcons. So there's a precedent that this player will have some really good dividends. We saw Sam Laporta. He wasn't a first-rounder, but he had a lot of impact as a rookie. So the learning curve and the incorporation of rookie tight ends has been kind of accelerated to the point where Sadiq, wherever he lands, should be a key target for his team. Now, we don't want him necessarily, though, behind George Kittle coming off the Achilles and being groomed, or Travis Kelce getting older, going to be 38, and to have him as the guy waiting in the wings. That would not be very helpful at all. He would probably kill Kenyon Sadiq's value. But any other place, I mean, you even look at Philadelphia, even Dallas Goedert returning. He's a little bit older, so you get him in the first round. Sadiq can be that missing piece as the third kind of target that they need, kind of make Dallas Goedert into a more of a backup role here and really play well off A.J. Brown and Devonta Smith in Philadelphia. So there's a lot of possibilities for Kenyon Sadiq. And the best one, I think, I don't know if it's going to happen. They're going to have to make a move now that they got rid of that pick, or the Denver Broncos. And look, they need a tight end badly. Evan Ingram worked out for a little bit, but Bo Nix could use a tight end target that's going to have a lot. Impact now, it's not as pressing now that they have Jalen Waddle with Cortland Sutton, but they've been very interested in tight ends in the draft. They might end up with Eli Stowers of Vanderbilt later, but Sadiq would be in play for Denver, and that's been a big point of emphasis. So it would not be a surprise if they find a way to get Sadiq and find a way to have him have some impact here, playing off what they have in Sutton and now Jalen Waddle. Now, some other rookies that we need to watch, depending on their landing spot. Two running backs, Darren Price, the other guy from Notre Dame. We'll have to see where he ends up. Right now, I have him going to the Falcons to be a little bit of help for Bijan Robinson, make him a very high-end handcuff, but I could also see him in a different spot, like Miami would be good, again, to lead there with Devon Achane being a little bit of slider back that you would look at. Jadarian Price, a pretty solid, strong back. Then you look at Emmett Johnson, an absolute blazer here from Nebraska. So, again, the landing spots are going to be important, but there was just a lot of movement in free agency to think that Jeremiyah Love is probably ticketed to the best role here as a workhorse. For some of these guys, it's going to depend on where they land and their complementary and potential usage here to really think they'll have the impact we're looking for in fantasy beyond just being plus handcuffs. And then other receivers, I mentioned Casey Concepcion. He could be an option for the Dolphins. If Cooper goes early, he could really fill in the void of Jalen Waddle, short area receiver, see a lot of volume. So that's a team to watch for any of these receivers, the Miami Dolphins for sure. And they'll be in the mix for everyone because, again, they have a big void at wide receiver. Tyreek Hill's gone. Jalen Waddle's gone. They need someone to throw to in that offense for Malik Willis. So that's a team I would circle here as one we're going to watch very carefully what receivers land there, what running back lands there as well in the draft to help Devon Achane and Ollie Gordon in Miami. So, again, those are some of the other rookies I mentioned. How about Fernando Mendoza? We'll talk about him briefly here to close the show. Quarterback 28 on the board right now, the presumed number one overall pick to the Raiders. I mean, it's a done deal here almost, except for getting the jersey in his hand and giving him the contract on April 23rd in Pittsburgh. So I look at this and say, look, I'm going to keep my eye on him, but he's going to have to get some more weapons. I can't just say it's going to happen right now in Clint Kubiak's offense with just Brock Bowers and Genty. We'll see what they do at wide receiver. But I think Fernando Mendoza, solid quarterback for Superflex 2 QB leagues right now. But in terms of looking for 1 QB leagues in redraft, right now I think you can leave Mendoza on the table, especially with some rumors that Kirk Cousins might be the bridge starter there with Las Vegas. So there you go. There is a look at the 6 most impactful prospects for fantasy before they're on a team here from my mock draft at sportingnews.com. Thanks again for making Locked On Fantasy Football your first listen today. We really appreciate your support of this podcast and as we continue to bring to you all season long. If you never miss an episode, the Everyday Club is built for you. Get Locked On Fantasy Football ad-free plus members only Discord access and more. Head to lockedonfantasyfootball.supercast.com to join the club. For those of you on video, we send you the first ever 24/7 National NBA YouTube channel. On audio, make sure you make your second listen Locked On NFL Draft. For this episode, Locked On Fantasy Football, this has been Vinnie Iyer. For Michelle Madjuk, we'll be back later this week with plenty more fantasy analysis for you. For now, bye, y'all.